Religious conflict. History is packed full of horrible things that people have done to each other in the name of religion. The Crusades were an unfortunate part of that history. There were 8 of them, as many as the Harry Potter movies. But no battle between Harry and Voldemort could approach the cruel and senseless savagery that engulfed Jerusalem and neighboring regions between the 11th and 16th centuries. Life was hard back then. Here's why. The breaking wheel.
If you were taken prisoner during the Crusades, there's a pretty good chance you would have been subjected to some pretty gnarly punishments that would make waterboarding look like water skiing. They devised some pretty ingenious inventions, the Europeans did, to make those subjected feel the pain.
Invented in 1589, one of them was called the breaking wheel. A lot of medieval punishment devices were created to extract information from the enemy. Maybe church officials wanted someone to confess to one thing or another, like believing in reincarnation or not believing in Jesus, among other things. The breaking wheel wasn't used for any of that. Despite the biblical commandment of "thou shalt not kill," if you found yourself on a breaking wheel, your life would soon be over, and it would hurt a lot. Heretics would be put out on a big wooden wagon wheel. Sometimes the wheel was laid on its side and propped up on a kind of pedestal, like this. Other times the wheel would be upright and they'd be tied to it, like this. Then the clobbering would begin. The spaces between the spokes were also quite conducive to fracturing bones. Most of the time, they took place in public for everyone to see and was really an awful way to go. And to top it off, these breaking wheels continued to be used all the way up to the mid-1800s. So much for the Enlightenment. The Pair of Anguish.
I don't know about you, but the Pair of Anguish doesn't sound like any fruit I'd want to eat. I'm just imagining being at a restaurant and telling the server, yes, I'd like the Pair of Anguish to start, and for my entree, I'd like the risotto of misery. Please.
While the breaking wheel meant certain demise, the Pair of Anguish was used to get people to spill wanted info, although not while it was in their mouths. These cute little devices were placed inside people's mouths, where 4 metal leaves were slowly opened up inside by a screw that was turned on the handle. The result was extreme pain that often tore the mouths. What's worse, they were often inserted into, other areas where the sun don't shine. Ooh. Women wanted in too.
Much like a sports bar during the Super Bowl, we tend to think of the Crusades as a masculine affair. But actually, a lot of women did get involved.
There are documented accounts of at least 91 specific women who made their journey from Europe to the Holy Land. Most of them traveled with their husbands. However, there were some particularly influential and powerful female leads. One of the most famous was Eleanor of Aquitaine, who was the wife of French King Louis VII. She took up the cross, as they say, and led a march down toward the Holy Land. But as her army was passing through modern-day Turkey, they were routed by the Seljuk Turks. Down, but not yet defeated, the now very bummed-out Eleanor continued on with her husband Louis. Louis really wanted to take the city of Damascus, but after the defeat in Turkey, the French Crusader army was split and morale was low. Long story short, the whole crusade was basically a flop. To add insult to injury, Eleanor and Louis got an annulment and ended their marriage on the grounds that they were too closely related. It also didn't help that she didn't have a son after 15 years of marriage, a frustration shared by a lot of inbred royalty over the course of history. No one is spared.
Even if you lived in Europe and were a Christian, you probably were not entirely exempt from the wrath of the Crusades. By 1150, the Crusaders were no longer focusing on regaining the Holy Land. They were also dead set on weeding out heresy closer to home. The Holy Roman Empire was a Catholic empire, and any other form of Christianity was considered unholy. So when Pope Innocent III heard that there was a growing religious movement in southern France that thought Jesus was just an angel and not the Son of God, he got mad, and he did away with them.
The Christian sect was called Catharism, or Albigensianism for the city in France where it was based. Catharism had some support from the nobles in Albi, and the Catholic Church didn't like how popular it was becoming. The Albigensian Crusade began in 1215. The first season of crusading into the Cathar territory was a catastrophe because it was difficult to distinguish Cathars from Catholics. It said that the Crusaders got instructions from one of the Pope's advisors to simply end them all. God will know his own. As a result, the entire city of Béziers in southern France was annihilated. Ransoming was a thing, sometimes.
Now, it wasn't any better in Jerusalem. One of the worst examples was during the Third Crusade in 1191, when Richard the Lionheart was battling it out with the Ayyubid King Saladin in the city of Acre.
The main beef was that King Richard really wanted the true cross, which he and all Christians thought was the actual cross that Jesus perished on, and which Saladin had. When Richard took Acre, he basically held everyone in the city captive, demanded that Saladin give him the cross, the 1,600 Christian prisoners, and 100,000 pieces of gold. Saladin had conquered Jerusalem a few years earlier, which ended the Second Crusade and then kicked off the Third. He was apparently pretty comfortable there because, despite accepting Richard's offer, he kept delaying and delaying. What happened next is kind of like if you'd been trying to avoid an ex's text for months, and then you walked outside and found your car keyed. After a few months passed, Richard had had enough. He rounded up 2,700 of the Acre's inhabitants, took them to a hill just outside the city of Ayodhya, and gave them all a date in the afterlife, which was probably hell according to Richard, but probably heaven according to Saladin.
Or maybe they don't go anywhere, and everything means nothing.
Saladin, who definitely wasn't given the true cross back now, responded by doing the same to the 1,600 Christians he had in his custody. In the end, no one really won, and it took 4 more crusades for everyone to figure that out.
A King's Ransom. But thankfully, a lot of prisoner exchanges and ransoms did go off without thousands of prisoners perishing in the aftermath.
One of the most famous and expensive ransoms of the Crusades came during the seventh one, which lasted from 1248 to 1254. This was the episode when the Crusaders finally captured Jesus and ended their... Wait, what did the Crusades fight over again? Or was this the episode where the king's daughter is captured and then he goes on a rampage to... No, that wasn't right either. That's the plot from Taken. Where were we? Right, Seventh Crusade. 7 might be a lucky number, but that wasn't the case for the King of France, Louis IX. In 1249, he led his own army down into Egypt, which at that time was a part of the Ayyubid dynasty. Louis and his men landed at the mouth of the Nile and quickly took the Ayyubid city of Damietta. Encouraged, they marched south to the city of Montserrat. This time, Louis's army was ravaged, and while he and some of his remaining men tried to limp back to Damietta, they were taken prisoner. But instead of taking out the King of France, the Ayyubids decided to ransom him off. The French accepted and paid the Ayyubids 400,000 livres tournois, today's equivalent of around $25 million, as well as agreeing to give back the city of Damietta. Overall, the Seventh Crusade was a disaster for King Louis. Some historians estimate that the whole debacle cost the French crown somewhere around 100 million in today's dollars. But hey, compared to the U.S. defense budget, that's peanuts. Know anything else about life during the Crusade? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more nutty history.